Hello, welcome to a new episode of Design Disruption. Um, as you know, over the past year or so, we've been bringing you these conversations on how to reimagine and build back better. The world has collectively faced political, economic, and social disruptions in the past year. But we do think that these challenging times have triggered an opportunity to think about reimagining a roadmap to build back better, and to think about creating built environment and cities to be more inclusive, livable, and happier. Today, we are so honored to speak with a living legend, Professor B.V. Doshi, who, as many of you know, is an institution builder, educator, a visionary architect, and urbanist. So, and we are so thrilled to bring this conversation to you on ArchDaily's social media platforms. I'm Prathima Manohar from the Think Do Tank, the Urban Vision, and I'm always so thrilled to bring this programming to all of you with my colleague Sam Lubell from New York. Sam?
Hi, Prathima. How are you? Pleasure as always to work on this show with you. And as you mentioned, especially honored and excited to have Professor BV slash Balkrishna Doshi, also as he prefers to be just known as Doshi. Really, just what can we say? One of the world's great thinkers and great architects, recent winner of the Pritzker Prize for Architecture, and known especially, which is exciting for us, for building beautiful and humane work that is not just for the wealthy, but for all people, and merging ideas of modernity and sort of vernacular and local strategies as one. Professor Doshi, really a pleasure to have you on the show.
Sam and Prathima, I think I'm so glad that we are meeting like this. This is for the first time, and also especially after the pandemic. It's going to be a great thing to talk about, really, how people are now seeing things suddenly with a drastic disruption that happened, which was never expected. But as you know, people are coming back. They're coming back like we are meeting today. And I think one can really talk about reconstruction, reviewing things, revitalizing, and really say that situations like this have happened which we never expected. But it is possible to rediscover ourselves anew and fresh. And I think that's why, I am very glad to be part of your conversation.
Well, thank you so much. And we're excited that you're thinking along those terms. You have been a practicing architect for many decades, and just to see how freshly you're thinking and thinking about renewing, not kind of holding on to the past is very, very encouraging. Not that you don't respect the past, but you also you use that and you move forward with it. So I'm glad to see that you're well. You look great, and I hope that the pandemic you've been okay throughout it.
Sure.
Good.
One of the things which I would like to mention here, that every morning when I get up, I have a door and a garden with which I stay. The first thing that happens is I open the doors and the window and look at the changing nature of trees and plants and flowers and birds. The reason is that they are constantly reinventing themselves. There is a lot of energy, and there is an understanding of how one could talk about ecology or natural cycles, and how these cycles really work together to create new vitalities. Flowers always come back. Trees grow and they blossom. Very often in winter, we know the trees will have no branches, no leaves at all. We are scared, but we are waiting for the spring. And as the spring comes up, we think differently. And I think that is a very important thing that I learned during this pandemic. It was for me energizing to really say that it is not today, this is not the end. The cycle of nature is continuing. And I think most important thing for me is to watch the nature and the sky.
Beautiful, beautifully put, and very inspiring. I think that combination of poetry and philosophy that you incorporate into your practice, it really shows in the work, and there's an inspiration there that really, is very infectious. But what I wanted to ask you about first, well, you're known for all types of building types. But one thing you're especially known for, and I think it's especially crucial now in cities where there's, I think the word housing crisis, I guess it's the phrase housing crisis, sort of is sort of omnipresent in any city you talk about. They're trying to figure out how people can afford to live in decently. Certainly in India, that's a huge problem. But you're known for creating housing that's humane, intuitive, beautiful, and it's for all incomes. It's not, as I mentioned before, it's not just for the wealthy. And so maybe what we can start off with, and we're going to show some images of your work a little bit later, but maybe you can talk about some of the techniques that you've taken to create this sort of this housing that fosters, that gives people empowerment. It gives them community. It makes them feel dignified, which housing for especially on a larger scale doesn't always do. And what it takes, what kind of understanding you need to have of architecture, of cities, of people to make kind of humane housing for everybody.
It's a long question, but a very simple thing is the way the way we are brought up. Our young age, our background, our environment, our learning process, all this, when you look at it, you know that we have gradually compartmentalized, and gradually our whole focus, our attitude, our environment is shrinking, and we only know about us as I or you or whatnot. Neither we are walking around in a place where there is nobody. There are deserts, where there is no water. We have not seen the rivers drying up. We have not seen the dust storms, etc., changing, and there is no grain at all to live and eat. We are always people, who live in the urban context. We live in crowd, we live in good conditions, we are comfortable. And as a result, what happens is we don't know the other world, what we call the other half. In fact, it is more than half. And I think this is the thing which our education, our background, our discussion never brings forth. This pandemic has suddenly shook us up, and we are finding that, my God, the world that we are already here and enjoying and feeling, absolutely getting involved, may not be there at all. And I think that has shaken us up. But I hope that for architects, it's very important that we look at place around, we look around and we walk a little bit. And we walk towards the people who live in settlements where there is nothing. Poverty is something which we think, is a very isolated thing. But I was brought up like this. In the 1960s and 50s in Bombay at night, I have seen the photographs, I have walked on the roads. The streets were full of the people who have come, migrants, and they are occupying the footpaths, the roads, etc. And if you are walking or if you are driving, you have to be very, very careful. When you think about it, then you say, who are we? We are talking as architects means what? Where is the shelter? We have nothing to talk. So we have narrowed down the world, and I think this pandemic is now opening it for us. But if we don't take the advantage of this, if we don't really get into this in a deeper sense and start making notes of these experiences, isolation, doubts, crisis, fear, all these things that we talk of, scarcity, loss of identity, all these things are going to come back again to us. But at least we can say that what we practice, where we live, what we are working on, what we are trying to do, summarizes or incorporates all these things to say, what is it? When we go to the colleges, when we practice, what is the class we are in? What are the societies that we are talking about? When we are talking about buildings, we are talking about a building which is almost no wall, no tap, no toilet, or we are talking about a building which is complete as if that I'm traveling into another world. Now, these are the questions which we should, as architects, planners, and even citizens, think about. And I think this is something which has helped me in the pandemic. I was just thinking about it, and I was trying to say, if there was nothing and there is nothing like tomorrow, if the rains less reduce, and if there is a starvation, what kind of a life would I have? So first thing is humility, cooperation, feeling together and compassionate, and trying to do what we can do with the means that we have, and think that if those who are having not means, how am I going to be useful as an individual, as a professional, and what can I do? And I think this is what the pandemic is asking me to question.
Love that. I'm going to show some of your work just to give our viewers an idea of how you specifically integrate this kind of thinking in, and maybe we can talk about. I think I love what you're saying about people's identities, people's dignity, people losing that, and how you kind of can give that to them in ways that are not. They don't have to be high cost. They can be in some ways relatively simple, but extremely smart and extremely thoughtful. So I'll show you a couple. We'll share a couple of things right now, just to give you that idea. So this is an earlier project in 1968.
Yeah, these are the projects which I started my career with, working for the industries who were settling in a new place, and they were building them for their employees and the people who are nearby towns. And the conditions was that could you give them something which is more alternatives, which are more suitable to their life, into the condition that they are supposed to be, which is the good condition, because these are all employees of the industries. So they are paid well, but they would like to have home. They would like to feel communities. They would like to feel that they have not left their homes or their background. So it's a socio-economic, cultural understanding or discovery.
Right. They don't want to feel. They want to feel. They don't want to feel displaced. If they move somewhere new, they still want to feel comfortable, familiar, and respected as
social interaction, education, health, open spaces, gardens, but all that where they can feel that they are again with their neighbors. They are with their people who have come there. Because those people who come to the industry, they would stay there with their families, with their grandparents and whatnot for years. And they eventually become a part and parcel of that society, which has been revitalized or habited. Now,
Right.
this is something which one has to remember. So, connecting to the previous life, previous way of socializing, and connecting further to the future in which they might step in. So it's really the linking of the past to present to future.
And it's also.
Professor,
Sorry, Prathima. One
go
more
ahead,
question.
Sam.
I apologize. Then, in Aranya, another low-cost housing, there's also this concept of creating these sort of knowing also urban planning quite well, and creating development this kind of little city and these little rooms. It makes me think a lot of. I know you worked with Louis Kahn, the architect Louis Kahn, and he was very interested in the idea of creating sort of rooms and sort of creation of spaces that you would see in a building outside in the urban realm. And it certainly seems to be something that you're doing here, is sort of creating these really unique environments, and sort of this really good knowledge, really intense knowledge of urban planning, local urban planning, and local architecture, and incorporating that into modern architecture.
If I wanted to just slightly make a change in your statement,
Please do.
urban planning, local conditions, then the kind of society or what you call socio-economic cultural things, image of those words for the people who live in city, people who live on the fringe, and people who live on the roads and the pavement is very different. A definition of a house, for example, like these people who are in the brick, they have come to that Aranya housing. They never had a house. So what you try to do is give them a place for the children, give them a place which they feel at home but secure. You create them, something which doesn't divide but integrates. I think these are the questions which are not taught in the schools. I was heading the school also. So we don't talk about integration, we talk of separation and classification. So one of the areas of our education today is, are we talking about integral life? Are we talking about the life of the elderly and the youngest ones? Are we talking about the people who have unemployment and somebody who has something surplus? I have seen people after a while working hard, the drivers and workers, etc., who come back in the evening, but after 15, 20 years, they have built with the material that is available and they created their home. They changed my plans completely. They replaced rooms, they replaced function, but they lived. So I would ask one question, and that question remains to me: what is the meaning of life? What is the meaning of society? And what is the meaning of cooperation and sustainability?
I love that. Sorry, Prathima. Let me defer to you for a couple questions now. Got excited there.
I just want to, I think Professor Doshi's initial reflection, um, the reflections that he had during this pandemic of, what should we be doing as a community? I think that's such a important area that all of us have to pay attention to. And I think that's been the kind of genesis of the show as well. And Professor Doshi, um, a lot of your work as an architect has been centered on social impact in a
One minute,
century.
I want to just make one addition there. It is not learning, but it is participating and becoming proactively working.
Yeah,
I mean, I am not an architect who works in the room or on a table or with a client, but I am saying I am working with the people who are there and who need something to live with.
yeah,
Do they get food? Do they get employment? Do they get something to live? Do they get education? Do the children get some medicine? Now, all those things which we talk about, but we are not participating. And therefore, as architectural education, we are not doing justice to our life itself.
yeah. Thank you for outlining what our role should be as a profession, and a lot of your work has reflected that. It's about the social impact and how do you kind of enable, better humanity for all the people in our cities. And obviously, the architectural culture over the last few decades has been, it has been more flashy. So I think I was so excited when you were recognized internationally for your work, which is really about social impact and making life better for all the people in our cities. And Professor, I want to talk to you a little bit about what are vernacular kind of traditions and architectural uh, values mean to you when you kind of come up with a project? I know community life, community life is a big kind of feature in all of your architecture. It's made to create a vibrant life. So talk to me about how India and our vernacular traditions have inspired you uh, to create some of the spaces that are in your buildings.
The first thing is that that word vernacular doesn't exist when we talk of life as a whole. Whether you are in a desert climate or whether you are in the metros in Bombay or whether you are in the slum, life is life. So questions that I would ask my student, which I do, that's why I started School of Architecture, School of Planning, etc. And then I got into Aranya and other housing. The reason is that I am talking of life. I am not talking about style. I am not talking about a particular approach. I am saying, how can a person in the season or in his life or in his childhood, how would he live? Would he live communicative with proper? Will he have exchanges? Would he get help? Would he get assistance? Would he share his life? Would he learn something more than what is not there? Can he go to learn into a better place? Can he, when he sees people who are driving on the roads outside with big cars, where would he not, should he not have aspirations? And if they are there, should you not have more and more opportunities? And I think these questions come up to my mind. And I think first thing is then to become a part and parcel of the society in which we are not only living, but we are thinking about. And that is not a classification. It is a society which we go on any Indian road and it is mixed traffic.
Yeah.
So when I started education with the students in 1962, the first thing I took them was to the slums. Then I took them to the potters. Then I took them to the villages, into remote areas and then slowly on the fringe of villages. And then we started talking about that how are they living? How are they spending time? Where do they go to learn? Where do their children go? What about medical things? So once you start talking about this, you become aware about the kind of needs that are there required by not us, but by them. Moment we start talking, then we say we are designers. We are creative people. So then we start talking about means and ends of how to really put this together. Then we look at their life. For example, my planning school students got married in a slum. I'm talking of 1970s. The reason was that they came and then they began to become part and parcel of the slum, very famous slum. Sometimes not so good, but it was there, they got married. So the reason is moment we create awareness, the moment we create some affinity, concern, then we will start talking that now whatever I'm learning, whether I learn architecture or whether I learn creating a wall or making a furniture table, am I really connected to the life of the surrounding area? So the whole ecosystem that we are talking, ecologically we are talking in a larger scale. So my discussion would be then, if you look at it as your responsibility as whole and not as a specialist, I think you're working better.
I love that. I think that as Prathima was mentioning about architectural education, there doesn't always seem to be this kind of humility that you're putting forth here. This idea that there's genius, some level
Yes.
of genius in the slums, some level of genius in a village, and not that you're copying that, but you are acknowledging that kind of genius. That genius doesn't just exist in a university or in an architect's office. And I think it's sort of that's why I see it as humility.
As you learn in architecture gradually from making a brick wall to finally a fantastic building, you have learned all the crafts, all the disciplines. You have understood how scale, proportions, aesthetic construction, etc. is done. You have also understood that how people live in different kinds of societies and socio-economic conditions. You also have understood that the kind of work and the need that has to be there, it is not isolating, but it is integrating. You are finding then that it is a multiple use, it's a web which is to be required. Like in any place, you go to a village and you see a silversmith or a tailor, and you will find that he needs so many things. So once you have understood this, then you will also know, what am I supposed to do as an individual? What is my longing? Where can I be of great use to me and to them simultaneously? I become sensitive, but I'm sharing something, value. So all these things are part and parcel of the education. So when we started School of Architecture, eventually we started planning school and other disciplines, including Visual Arts Center, including other centers that are required. Now all those additions were made to create that comprehensive understanding and awareness, and all that is to be given. Then that is how Aranya came in the end, that it is not what we design, but it is what they design. And in Aranya there is no definition of architecture, it's only life, the quality of life, gracefulness of life.
And I just worked on an exhibition about some of the work of Frank Lloyd Wright, and I think he had a very similar approach, even though he doesn't always, he's sometimes has a reputation of being only an egoist, but his approach was, you have to learn by exploring. You don't want to just take what's told from you from above and sort of follow it, but you need to get out there and explore and see the natural world, see the world. And I think that's kind of harder and harder these days. People aren't going around exploring, first of all, because of COVID, but second of all, I think, with the internet, they're kind of happy just sitting back and just passively looking at stuff versus then going out into the world and visiting these places and learning by doing.
That's right.
I think that you mentioned that you started working, in the early 60s, and a lot of what you were doing early on was sort of you had sort of there's this movement to house people. When we're talking about housing and talking about kind of changing the culture of architecture in India, and you had a lot of support from the government. There were a lot of public projects going on, but today is a very different environment. So for now, when you're still trying to make these kinds of changes, what are the biggest challenges? Do you think has the global market made it harder to create this kind of architecture for everybody, or class divisions, or this stuff I was talking about, the internet ruling the day, or how do you sort of tackle today's challenges to still pull this off?
One of the things which we are talking about is not a discipline, but synthesis of life, a living environment, what we call habitat. And I think that habitat is a very important word because it talks about life, living, place, space, building structure, etc. Now it can take many forms, high tech to low tech, hard work to imported objects from any part of the world, but undercurrent is life, relationship of life, and the kind of integration with climate, with culture, with attitude. I think once we start looking at it, then we are really becoming a part and parcel of society. One thing is that we have become specialists. We have lost the becoming member of the society. We are advisors, we are consultants, we are
Right.
designers, and we design beautiful things. But are we really designing meaningful things? I think that would be the question that I would ask. Would it really be meaningful? Does it really bring something to upgrade the life and lifestyle?
That's an amazingly well put distinction.
Professor Doshi, this earlier this year, we had a group of international scientists at IPCC say it's code red for humanity because of climate change. And you know, your work has always had sustainability at the heart of it. You've always embraced practical, affordable sustainability by responding to climate. Your own studio, Sangat, and the Gufa Art Gallery have been pioneering case studies in this. I know circular construction is a buzzword these days, but you've used that decades ago, where you know, even in Sangat, you used waste materials and minimum resources in construction. Most of your architecture has very low energy loads because you know you're constantly responding to local climate. So as we face this big threat to humanity with climate change, what is your message to the architecture community to respond to this challenge?
You know, what you just now said is good enough as a response. You have said everything that is required. And I really mean it. You know, it is not, that I'm just saying what you talked about is really how you live or how you live, create your environment, and how do you really relate with your surroundings. And that is what one has to try to do. So, if we can bring, my argument would be that in our educational system, in our schools, in our exams, and the kind of approach, this, what you just mentioned, has unfortunately absent.
Yeah.
This is an experiment. This is an experiment with minimum material, ferro cement, and I got hold of people from the tribal areas, and they were doing the hut with bamboo and with the hands clapping, slowly putting the mud together. And the same technology we used, with chicken wire mesh, and
Hmm.
created domes, and they were done by the tribals. So the issue is not whether do this or that. You want to create something, you want to create an environment, you want to create something which is convenient to you. Let us do that and say that it is not only necessary to use the word affordable or organic or something, but it is really natural, obvious, affordable, and anybody can use it. My
What
only
is
argument.
your
Yes, go
Professor,
ahead.
I know you've been a teacher to many of us here in India and all over the world. So, what is your message to the younger community of architects about our responsibility to deal with climate change?
Supposing that I use one line and I said, first of all, celebrating habitat. Habitat covers everything, and you are going to celebrate it. And if I decide to say that I am going to teach everybody celebrating habitat, now it doesn't mean only one or the other. I am constantly in the joyous movement in every act that I do, every place I live, or everything that I create. And I think that is what India is about. The whole Indian continent in the world. I mean, anywhere, in India you go, and if you go and see the rural areas, the remote areas, they have invented every possible tool to create a joyous, efficient, workable, organic instrument. Look at our food. If we talk about our food, do we not have a mixed food all the time so that you can use your own way in your own condition at different scales? Similarly, instead of classifying dishes, do we not really create these things, in our wedding ceremonies, etc.? And we have a big ceremony and we give everybody a choice. They can take that food, whatever they need, whatever quantity, but they celebrate. So I would say that what we should write is celebrating habitat.
Well, speaking of habitat, I wanted to show I wanted to see if you could take us through sort of the process of one of your projects. We showed it just a second ago, but that's Sangha, um, and I think what I'm interested in is in that project, because it's just, to me, it's one of your masterpieces, one of many, in sort of
See,
creating this.
the
Oh, sorry, go
thing
ahead.
was, Sangat, I wanted to show a demonstration of total sustainability, maximum sustainability. So one was using the walls. First of all, climate. Do I really control reduce the problems of climate in terms of comfort conditions, etc. Second is, do I use light, ventilation, and other things so that I don't need to use electrical and other mechanical devices?
Right.
Does the temperature become comfortable? Thus, I don't use less of electricity. Third one is, do I use the place in such a way that it can be used in every way? For example, gardens and floors and everything. Can I not use all the waste products on different construction sites and put them there together? So the issue was very simple. I was saying, I have no money. I have not this, I have not this, I have not this. What shall I do? And I still want the place to sing, the place to celebrate joy. And I think that's all. It's a question of putting things together, working out. But the last line is celebrate habitat. How do I celebrate? By
Well, it's
using less energy,
and
etc.
it seems like it seems like when you see it, to me, that project, like, it's hard to imagine it not being there, the way it fits into the landscape, the way it fits into the culture, how incredibly luminous and modern it feels. But then you see what's going on. I've been to India a couple times in recent years, and so many of the new buildings seem to have nothing to do at all with the local topography, with the local culture, with kind of tradition of, as you were saying, there's these giant glass buildings. This is what somebody, one of our viewers was asking about. What do you think about these buildings that are kind of all glass, in the hot sun of the middle of India, that sort of seem to ignore the context completely? What is your take on sort of where things, are mostly going?
The word that I used was habitat first. Now I have to change that word and talk about architecture. And then I want to talk architecture of contemporary world. I have gone much farther from my initial mandate for myself. If I say celebrating habitat, I am already talking about rejoice and habitat at every condition. I can sleep on the floor or I can sleep on the terrace. I don't have so many fans. I have not much light. I can use it. I feel comfortable. Now, all these things are part and parcel of this mandate. And I think if one can do that, then it is a good thing to do.
And are you? I'll show a couple of more recent projects, because it's also.
Incidentally, Aranya was done and then as a demonstration, because I saw the whole thing, how the slums lived, how the people, the families lived. Then I decided that there should be no definition of architecture, style, and purpose of definition, in a sense, function at a certain standard.
Right.
And I think they used waste product there. And I was quite surprised and I was so happy that they got the house and they had used drainage pipe, whatever waste product, and they used in the building. So definition of architecture needs to be revised. We should
Well,
talk only as habitat.
I love that, and there's a humility to that, using waste products to go into a building. There's a level of kind of engaging with the culture and the you said the climate, the geography.
Architecture also can come, provided, we use it, in a proper way. It is not that architecture is bad. You can use it in a way that it is graceful, but also affordable to many income levels.
And how about I put up some images here of some of your newer work. And again, you're in your 90s creating some of what I think is incredibly relevant, beautiful work. And but it also doesn't feel dated. I think that's another criticism I have of a lot of new work. It feels a little bit, it feels very much like it'll be in a few years, you'll be able to say, well, this was from this particular period. Whereas your work feels timeless. It could have been done 50 years ago. It could be done now. It feels classic and incredibly modern, but it doesn't feel faddy, following fads, I guess. How do you keep it timeless?
One of the things which we have not thought of, we are getting fascinated by mechanical and technological developments and tools, air conditioning, putting lights, putting the condition finishing materials, using things which are anything that is there which is inconvenient. We must make it very beautiful at any cost, and it should be high tech. So if you remove those things, supposing that all these people had local material, they would do equally good building at what I have done. It would be equally fascinating. So the issue is our educational system is wrong. I think we are not talking, for example, look at the schools in which we educate ourselves. Why are we not doing like Gandhiji was talking about ashram? Why did he build an ashram? He built an ashram the way he thought how to live. And then he created environment in every level. And I think that is important. Important is all has to be fused, integrated, and made into one whole, which we would be enjoying together. I think that's all there is.
Professor Doshi, one of your most celebrated contributions is going to be as an institution builder and an educator, for furthering the pedagogy of design and planning, especially around sustainability. And you've been a founder of so many institutions in India. Tell us a little bit about that. How did that happen? I know you were very young. Literally at the start of your practice, you set up so many of these institutions. How do you see all of that work? You know, in the future, and what's your message to the
It
community
has
about
to, it
this?
has to do with my upbringing. I left my home very early, lived very simply, went to Corbusier and had a very, very simple life. But in that process, I learned about simplicity. I was connected indirectly, directly through friends talking about these values philosophical, social, cultural, etc. So the issue is not what they do, and it is not the Bauhaus, etc. I said I would like to start fresh. I would like to start the fresh the way I think life could be. I don't think I have succeeded 100%, but quite a bit I have done. So first thing was to start the School of Architecture. Eventually, it became the center with planning and other architecture and art and whatnot. But beginning was that, and I began to talk to the students about life. I had no building, no canteen, no place. So the issues that I would think is let us create institutions which we begin with minimum, as if that there is hardly any cost or loss of energy or inconvenience. So we look at nature, we look at climate, we look at habits, we look at our clothing, we look at our discussions and dialogue, and we find that it is possible. A lot of things we don't have to have. You don't, people were educated before, long before electricity came. So the whole question is, what is a comfort level? I am comfortable and I am not comfortable is not true. If I am wedded to life and sustain life, and I feel that I'm enjoying that life, actually ideal is the Gandhian way. I mean, when you read that book, Satyana Prayoga, all those things that you see, Gandhi Ashram and others, I think one can. My building is not like ashram. It is much better that way, or more than expensive and whatnot. But what I'm trying to say is, if we can create that atmosphere, then we start talking about education and the teacher and the student, then the costs, high cost of fees, then we talk about as if that we had nothing, what would happen. And I think that pandemic to me was important because that is the first time we realize that our resources are going to be minimum critical, and therefore we will have to create something which is affordable. And I think that is what we have learned. So if you can learn that, you will get it. Pandemic's lesson is this, that life can be lived, life can be celebrated with minimum basic, because it is within us to celebrate. It is not something from outside which helps us to celebrate. We are breathing, we are smiling, we are rejoicing. And I think that is what my lesson is, my understanding is.
I love it. And it's hard to say. We said all along that it's hard to say a pandemic has a benefit, but I think they're lessons, and I think that's an incredibly strong lesson. I think we were going in some directions as a society in general that were not healthy, and I hope that we can hold on to some of these lessons that you're talking about. And so to end the show, we usually do a feature called Quickfire. And we ask you some quick questions just to get to know you a
Yes.
little better, a little bit differently.
No, no, please go ahead.
Prathima, do you
But
want
I
to ask
think
the first?
the time is up, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're
just a
gonna
couple
we're
of
gonna go
minutes. Yeah.
just 1 or 2 minutes over, if that's okay.
Okay, no problem.
Bad habit of ours.
Go ahead, go ahead.
I will start. Professor Doshi, which is an unbuilt project that you would most like to realize? Is there a
Oh,
project that you have designed but has not yet been built, which you'd like to realize?
well, I had done a long back a self-sustaining society near Hyderabad, long back with few of my colleague friends, from college. The whole idea was, if there are weavers, if there are ladies who are there, if there is a yarn, if there is an agriculture, why don't we do something? And I called it community of productive culture.
Wow, okay.
What we are saying is that culture cannot be letter. Community can combine different people, different disciplines. If they give their share, if they give their expertise, if they give their knowledge, and we cover and include all kinds of economic, social, cultural background people, we would talk about only productive culture, and then we will have got a life of a uniqueness. And this is really what I would like to do.
Yeah,
Well,
we'd love to see that.
yeah, let's do. Hopefully that'll happen. Do you have? Obviously, you said you're inspired in so many ways, exploring and talking and learning. Is there a particular place? I should say, outside of your studio, that you like to go, that you to be inspired? Do you have a particular favorite place?
Yeah, no, but I can say that you're talking about place or word?
Either.
Fav- Huh? The
Partic-
favorite place is the Gandhi Ashram in Ahmedabad
yes.
and Gandhiji's lifestyle. And the other one I am saying is that productive culture I would like to build, community of productive culture,
Uh-huh.
where all kinds of lives will go on, but they are in harmony with one another and they are interdependent, interlinked. I
I think
mean,
it's
if you go to
fascinating.
see the villages, if you go and see the villages, some of them which are there for a long time, and their life there, if you analyze, is very similar to that. They don't talk of poverty or richness, they talk of work and quality. They think
True.
about sacredness. So I would think the word sacredness is very important.
Okay, final question before we wrap up. Professor Doshi, I know you've built all around the country, but which has been your kind of most favorite place or city or village to build your architecture in? Is there a memorable project in
I
your
think
place?
so. Aranya, when I go there very often, I still feel very happy because some are incomplete, some are added, some are completely different, some have become 3 stories, people have added. It is all not violation, but to me, it is really saying that this is another way to live. And they all
Yeah.
are living together. And that is really my favorite, Aranya.
Thank you, Professor. I think
Let me
that's
ask one
truly,
more. Let me ask
yeah.
one more thing, Prathima. Sorry, I apologize.
Thank you,
I,
Sam. Sorry, I'm sorry that we have taken more time, but that's what it is.
I have one question. Do you have a piece of paper near you? Something you could? We're going to do it. We wanted to do a little sketch before we end. Is that? Do you have anything like
Yes,
that?
yes.
So, uh, well, I love what you said about. You were talking about space, Gandhi's ashram, and the kind of instilling sacredness into everything
Yes.
that you do. So maybe what we're going to do a sketch, and I'm going to do one too. And I'm really bad at sketching, so sorry in advance. But maybe do a sketch of kind of your ideal. Of an ideal kind of sacred space, a space that you think people would love to go to sort of to kind of get that sense of awe and that sense of meaning that you get in a sacred space.
While Professor Doshi and Sam, sketch out their idea of a sacred space, I just want to say hello to the amazing ArchDaily community that joins us on these conversations. Thank you so much. Abdias, Umang, Sale, I hope you enjoyed this conversation and, please continue to comment and discuss further on this amazing dialogue that we've had today with Professor Doshi. And I think he really, set the tone for what our agenda should be as a profession for social impact. So, uh, yeah, I really
So
enjoyed this conversation. So I think Professor Doshi has his.
Excellent.
I have written here
Professor
what
Doshi, could you pull it up a little bit? I'm making it full screen. Yes, yes.
sacred place for
Oh, courtyard.
gathering and celebrating.
Courtyard, tree, sacred, calm, gathering, gathering place. What's the last words? Celebrating.
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 Yeah.
Oh, Professor Doshi, thank you so much for being a sport and indulging us. And I want to, really thank you for inspiring a generation of architects here in the subcontinent and in Asia. I think your message really is the foundation for how we should be practicing this profession. So we are so honored to have this important conversation. Thank you for spending the hour with us.
Prathima and Sam, you both were wonderful. You had asked relevant questions, so they provoked me to say something. And I hope, that I have tried to say something which was meaningful. So thank you for arranging this meeting and this video conference. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much. We're
Professor
honored.
Doshi.
My sketch. I'll just quickly pull it up. It's a
Oh,
cave essentially.
yeah.
It's a cave full of trees, and you walk in, and it becomes more and more full of nature. But your sketch was much more thoughtful and beautiful, and your words are equally beautiful, and we really appreciate that.
I must tell you that you have drawn a cave, but you have added so many trees,
Yeah.
and I'm sure there is going to be sunlight, there is going
Yeah.
to be flowers, and there will be fruit and even animals and birds there.
There you go. Good.
Actually, done a planet in the other way around.
Yes, good collaboration. I
Yeah,
need your help on these things. This is good.
I think it's wonderful. You are talking about what is on the planet, you are putting it inside and be together with them. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank
Well,
you, Professor Doshi. This has been such a treat. Thank you so much.
Thank
yeah,
you,
thank you.
Prathima. Thank you, Sam. Thank you for this wonderful time. Great.
Thank you.
And I hope this is all useful.
Very
It
useful. We're
was
very
amazing. Thank you.
extremely inspiring. Thank you.
Bye. Bye.